Brought to you by SunWest Genetics.
24/7, 365 niggas, we
burn that.
On the block all day with a swisher, man, we
Burn that.
got my real ass niggas in the house, we always
Burn that.
hot.
Burn that.
Burn that kush. Homie, I'm about to bust down the whole bush. I'm about to roll up 6th grade swishers. Puff, puff, pass, yeah, me and my niggas. When I'm in the ride, we burn that rubber. Never get burnt, cause I always wear rubber. Never get burnt, cause my skin dark color. But I'm coolin' in the shade when I spit that thunder. And I bring the lightning. When I spark up another J. These niggas got bunkweed, BC, best chronic. Shouts out to Fresno, the Bay, LA. Man, it's a West Coast thing. Throw your dubs all up in the air and rock to this MVP. Jake, Easy, Big Puffa, 420 every day, I swear. I always
Burn that.
all my niggas from the 604, we always
Burn that.
BC means best chronic, we
Burn that. Burn that.
all my real day ones from the jump, we always
Burn that.
come on,
Burn that. Burn that.
burn that thing. Neighbors always telling me, boy, that stank. Calling up the pigs, they ain't knocked on answer. Cigarettes legal, while I'm saying fuck cancer. When I'm in the ride, it's me, 3 homies. 4 real niggas, ain't none of us phony. 5 o'clock, picked up a chick named Jody. She told me she smart, so I said, bitch, blow me. When I'm on the block, I rock out Bobby Brown, talking down, selling dope, just a hobby. Smoking on a J, some J tried to rob me. Smoke him in the face, now the place no hobby. Yeah, I'm talking heat. Pass me a lighter. I'm feeling kinda stressed, now I'm blessed cause I'm higher. Smoking on the sticky with my niggas from the G. Like every single day, it don't matter where we be. We always
Burn that.
all my niggas from my G-Town hood, we always
Burn that.
when I'm up in the booth doing songs, we
Burn that. Burn that.
when I'm rolling down the highway in my car, my niggas, we
Burn that.
come on.
Burn that.
Yeah, nigga. Smoke kush every day.
What's that?
What's up?
Burn that.
Burn it.
Yo, did you know that that's Nikki Minaj saying that? Burn that.
Okay, speaking of Nikki
Yeah,
Minaj.
Yo.
But anyways, yo, welcome, ladies and gentlemen,
Welcome,
to another episode of the Puffa Podcast. I'm your host, as always, the Big Puffa.
And I'm Big Lach.
Yeah.
What
We
it do?
got a couple of special guests here with us right now, and we got a special guest on the way. So you know, but yo, actually, I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourself first, and then we'll really just get into
Get
it.
to it.
Cool.
No,
What's
you
up?
don't need to.
Do I need to-
No, it's there.
Don't
It's
even
chilling.
need to.
All right.
Making it easy on
Okay,
y'all.
we made it easy.
Just chill.
Okay, upgrades. I see.
Right?
Yeah.
go.
I'm Rachel. That's it.
What's up, Rachel?
Aaron, aka AS Visuals. Check me out on Instagram, as.visuals__.
Plug.
All of that.
Plug.
Yep. And mine is RAYYTURR.
Yo, you got that?
You got that?
Shout out to everybody who's in the chat right now. Yo, we love
Shouts
y'all.
out.
Shouts out to everyone watching live, and shouts out to everyone who's going to be watching a little bit later. And yo, shouts out. I want to give a huge shout out to Cannabis Culture Smoke Lounge. Yo, y'all need to come down and check it out. Yo, what's the official address? 307 West Hastings. Yo, you got to come check this place out. Yo, East Hastings. Oh, shit.
Fire down here.
East Hastings.
It
Yo,
get
East
lit.
Side.
Gets lit in this bitch. Yo, check out the one on 1674 Davie Street, too. There's 2 of them. You feel me?
There you go. But the one at 307 Hastings provided
they
us
got these
with some
beautiful,
smoke
beautiful-
today.
Ooh.
What are you guys smoking on right now?
Like, good.
We smoking on the what's this one called again?
There was like MK.
Grape God and the MK.
Grape God and MK Ultra.
MK
Those are
Ultra,
like 2 of
yo.
my favorite strains, actually.
Yeah, MK
That's
Ultra's
perfect.
up there
Yeah.
for me, bro. I be liking that.
Even Grape
Grape
God, like
God
a
is
good
pretty dope.
batches.
Yeah.
I love like a cheesy, like weird hybrid.
Is that Kush? Grape God?
Hey yo, big shouts out to DZ and Reaper in the house. You know what's good?
Shouts
What's good?
out.
Okay.
Is it Kush? Grape God? Is that a Kush?
I think
Blackberry
it's-
Kush.
It's God Bud.
Shout out
and,
to Canna
Yeah,
Bernards.
that's great. There is some Kush genetics in there, but
Yo, and Dib
Yeah,
Nelson,
great
what's
Kush.
up? TJ
God Bud.
Patient, what's good? Premier BC Bud, you know.
Oh, yo, shout out TJ. He always in this bitch. Always getting lit in our comments.
that Blackberry Kush, okay.
yes.
Tastes
Tastes like juice, okay.
Hey,
that
hey,
grape
hey.
drink.
Yo, shouts out to Detonator.
That sounds
He always in the
good.
chat too,
Big
keeping
facts.
it real. So we gotta start the show off on a what they call a somber note. Give a R.I.P. to Mac Miller, who passed away of an apparent drug overdose.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
26.
26, really young. I'm 26.
Me
I'm like,
too.
you know,
Damn.
yeah,
Oh,
too
26,
young.
That's crazy.
Very talented
young.
rapper.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. I like his the previous project, Divine Feminine is probably one of the
Divine.
That's something you'd recommend.
Oh yeah, Divine Feminine is probably one of my favorite Mac Miller.
Now, did he have any that you know of any good smoking songs that you could smoke to? Not necessarily about smoking, but just some songs that you could smoke to. That'd be
Well, Divine
G's
Feminine
is my
oh,
favorite
yeah,
Mac
yeah.
Miller song.
What-
G's with Schoolboy Q.
G's.
Oh yeah,
You can
that's
do
I've
anything.
heard.
You can do
Yeah.
anything to that song. It also has a great video. If you're
That
high,
song
that's
goes
a great
hard.
video.
Yeah,
Nice.
and the video goes hard too. Yeah.
G's?
Jeez.
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
G-E-S.
Oh, really
G's.
sad, talented,
Facts.
gone way too
With
soon.
Schoolboy. It's a good Schoolboy verse too.
Schoolboy's hard. Damn.
Also, just let him know who the guest will be. He's in court, so know where he's at.
I told you we had another guest on the way. Later on, we're going to be joined by Neil Magnuson of the Cannabis Substitution Project.
Y'all know Neil. If you're around here.
So he's going to be stopping by a little bit later, and we're going to actually talk about this, and it actually kind of ties into this whole R.I.P. Mac Miller thing. So stay tuned. It's going to be
Get
dope.
to it.
It's going to be dope.
Fire.
Yo, so
We mentioned Nicki Minaj a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go to that. Let's go to
yo,
that.
so did you guys?
How did that happen?
What?
Didn't happen.
So from what I heard,
She liked
Nicki
she liked
Minaj
the
was
tweet.
talking greasy.
No,
Yeah.
she liked.
Yeah,
I'll set
Yeah,
the scene. I'll
set
set
the
the scene.
scene.
So apparently, if you, I don't know if you guys are into hip hop or if into rap or whatever, but Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, they've been having this undergoing beef tension going on for quite a while now. They've been subliminally taking shots at each other in like.
I think
when
it was
they
a
went
little.
to war.
I think it was a little one way. Yeah.
No, they both be subbing each other, yo. They both be subbing each other.
Who
I
did it all
think
start
people.
with?
I think people are creating a beef between
No,
them. 'Cause, like, to be honest, Nicki
no.
Minaj shouldn't have to feud with Cardi B. Like she's been around for way too
No,
long.
she
Like
wants
for
to.
this
She's
shit.
a-
Yeah,
No,
she's
but
just-
it doesn't. Let me.
She's like bitter. She's
queen.
bitter.
Yo, but guess what? It's real. Like everyone, you can't now. Everyone keeps trying to know. It's real. They do not like each other because maybe because Nicki feels a little threatened. You know,
Sometimes they just can't
she's
get
been on
along.
top for so long, and now all of a sudden, you know, there's this.
For sure, and she never
know?
let it go. She never let it go.
Yeah,
she
but-
always picked at fucking did her little fucking.
Yeah, but Cardi B
Nicki
subbing
Minaj-
back too. They were
Well,
both.
Cardi-
They're both throwing subs, but
Not
apparently,
start.
Nicki Minaj liked a tweet that was disrespecting Cardi B's mothering skills or something like that.
Yeah.
So at New York Fashion Week, Cardi B tried to pull up and tried
course.
to.
Cardi
She wanted the
about
smoke,
that
you know.
ass.
She wanted the smoke.
She's really about
Who
that.
want the smoke?
Cardi B really wants to
that.
smoke. She's from.
She don't.
Is she
deal
from
with
the
that.
Bronx?
She don't be handled disrespectfully
Yeah,
like
she
that.
is
Like
from
what?
Bronx.
And bro, Nicki started by like fucking doing her little petty shit, and Cardi at first wasn't like she was like I'm nothing.
So
nothing
okay.
against
So let
her.
me get this straight. I gotta.
Damn.
So your team.
I'm Team Cardi, bro.
Okay,
All the
okay.
way.
Team Barty out here.
Fuck
What
yeah.
about you?
Party. Okay.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
You
I
kind of
just
sound a
believe
little
that
Team
like
Nicki, but you sound at the same time like you don't really want.
I just don't like how female rappers have never gotten along, and
makes
they'll
no
never
sense.
get along, and there's only space for basically like one of them at a time. If you've noticed that's just how.
Nah,
it
but
is, so.
I beg to disagree.
I like Cardi B,
because
like, Cardi
there's
B's
Cardi
music is good, but-
you know, there's Nicki Minaj, Rhapsody out here on.
I love Rhapsody. I'll take Rhapsody
out
over
here,
both of them any
you know?
day. Yeah.
I wouldn't even sleep on the City Girls. City Girls out here doing their thing.
No, I'm not saying they're not talented female rappers, but just when you see like who's putting people on, and like especially like male hip hop artists and like show hosts and all that stuff, you only really ever see like one of them at a time. And right now, both of them are kind of vying for that spotlight. So
True.
I don't know. It's
In
kinda
terms of
heat,
like
but
sales and stuff,
they
Cardi B
honestly,
is winning.
Nicki Minaj is more of a pop artist at this point to me, so I think it's like super petty for her to be
No, but
trying
she be trying to rap though. Did you hear the
compete
last
with-
album?
Yeah. I heard the one song where she just like went in on everyone, which I loved personally. But
Yo, shout out to OG Brick 420. He said his dab rig's heated.
Nice.
Yo, that's what's up.
Good, better.
Yo,
Email.
at 420 we'll spark. Oh, no, actually, you know
you
what?
need an email.
Yeah, we do. Oh, we found it though. We were missing the email for a little bit.
It was
in
at
the
high
studio.
score.
It was at high score. They
It was at
took
high
it
score,
from
but it
us.
has come back. So.
Good, it's returned. As long as everything's been returned. That's all we ask.
Yeah, fully stocked.
Yeah, right? We're ready. Ready for them hot dabs.
You smoking on there, Big Puffa?
Aaron's taking a tolerance break, so
Tolerance
he's
break.
7 days cannabis free right now, and he's
How
aiming
long?
for
Okay, yeah,
31.
let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Why
days
have you
ago for
decided?
the
Why,
kid.
tell us about this tolerance break and why you decided to take it.
Okay,
How
so-
far you're into it and how long you're gonna be doing it for?
Okay,
Tolerance break.
Someone sounds like someone don't agree.
Tolerance.
Sometimes you need to take a break, you know? Just remove yourself from all things.
Well, I tell everyone at the end of the show, smoke weed every day.
Smoke
so what do
weed-
you mean? you
Smoke
gotta
weed
take a
every
break?
day except for the 31 days that you're taking a tolerance break. You know?
Now, how do you? Now, how many days? How many days are you into this?
7 days in.
How do you feel?
How do you feel? Yeah. good
I don't know. I
question.
feel regular. Regular.
I'm also blowing smoke in his face like all the
But
time.
like,
So maybe are you getting contact high?
I'm probably not.
Okay.
But my parents are
miss,
listening,
you
so.
miss it? Like, do you, like, how do you?
I
Does it feel
miss
better
it.
than
I
without?
miss it when I'm like in the car listening to music.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I
'cause
guess there's
it's a
certain
different-
times.
yeah.
Yeah, when you're just like lazing out or I
But
don't
other than
know,
that, I don't think I miss it per se.
go to the gym more probably.
And yeah, like I'm able to go to the gym whenever I want.
Okay.
Cause like after I smoke, I'm not going to the gym.
Yo, shout out to 2 Joints. Sup, my
Joints.
people.
Only tolerance break I take is between
Two
bong rips.
Yo,
Same.
Hey,
Me
Shout out
too.
Cannabis.
that's lit. That's lit. I like that.
So hard.
Honestly,
That goes
same.
hard.
There's a
That's
couple
lit.
minutes, right?
Between
Oh,
bong
that's
rips.
so funny.
Nah, but I don't think I'm not gonna give it up per se. But you know, sometimes.
You just wanna see
Okay, what
it.
was the reason
Cause
though? What
I
was the
did
reason?
one. I did one last year.
What's the purpose though? What's
He
the?
just does things just to
Just
do
a
it.
tolerance break. Just to get my
But why
tolerance up.
though?
Okay.
So you can get so that when you smoke again, you're gonna get more high.
Exactly.
Ah.
Because last year I did it, I had one puff and I was lit. I was lit. So you know, sometimes you have to take those just to.
Or maybe
See, I don't
to get
like
back.
that because then I find it's too hard to control. If I'm
Yeah,
starting,
you
like,
feel kind of
super
paranoid
lit
or
off,
just
a,
like.
Oh no, I don't even
Yeah,
like
but then
get
you
paranoid.
you
but-
end up smoking more weed, right? Like when you don't do it.
Yeah, there's plenty of weed out here. Shit, we in
Weed is all
BC,
around.
bro.
We don't listen. Like if your goal, I guess, is getting high,
No,
isn't
that ain't
it better
mine.
to just smoke off one puff?
Yo, it's
than,
almost
like,
420. Yo,
40
get your
puffs?
get
Nah,
your
'cause
joints,
I
get
like-
your rigs,
Get
get
your
your
lighters.
bomb
I like
ready.
the
smoking.
action.
Yeah.
I like the action of rolling when I'm Neo
timing.
in the building.
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
Perfect timing.
it's
Welcome.
420. He
Oh.
made it. Perfect timing.
Lock my keys in the car.
Oh god, one of those. I think I might. Or no, I don't.
Take a seat, young man.
I used to have to use an old wire.
You want a video here first?
Hi.
So I already know it. No, we got a special guest. I told you we had a special guest coming through. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Oh, you don't even have to, man. We're making it easy.
Alright,
You just
leave it right there.
Yeah, bro, making it
What do
easy
I know?
for you.
Alright. Neil Magnuson, I'm the director of the Cannabis Substitution Project at this point, amongst some other things that I've done in my life, but that's my latest and greatest thing for sure. We're giving away cannabis for the last year and a half, actually. For the fully first year, we went once a week to Vandu, close to Main and Hastings, downtown east side. And we give away care packs, about 150 care packs every time we go there. They got 4 to 6 edibles, a couple of joints. Sometimes we have topical creams and other things as well. And yeah, a huge lineup of people waits for us. Now we're twice a week since last February. We've been going Thursdays and Sundays, and we're there at noon with a whole bunch of amazing volunteers. the Holy Rollers rolling joints,
Nice.
and a big lineup of people waiting for us that are all so happy that we're there giving them cannabis and helping them in their lives. So
That's awesome. You're making an impact.
definitely making an impact. The last time we were there, where are we? Was it Sunday or Thursday? Sunday. I think we gave out 200 care packs. And we had well over 1,000 units that went into those care packs of edibles, just in the one event. We're twice a week we're doing similar things.
Twice a week.
Twice a week, yeah.
So you're putting in a lot of sweat equity into that, huh?
Well, I drive around and pick up donations and coordinate that kind of stuff, so it does take up some time for sure. But it's such a, I don't know, an energizing thing to be doing. You're helping. There's a horrible, opioid crisis. There's people dying. I personally have lost friends. And to be able to do something about that is very energizing. It's very uplifting, because otherwise it's a pretty down thing, this whole opioid crisis. But the cannabis community kicking in, coming together, all the volunteers that show up. We had 9 Holy Rollers on Sunday. We had 4 people behind the desk, and we've got 3 people doing line, keeping the line together. So that's a lot of volunteers, just showing up. Nobody's being paid anything, and it's a wonderful thing.
It's all down to be part of the process, right?
And I mean, this should do a number of things besides just help people get cannabis and not use street drugs. We're really demonstrating that we can give out a whole lot of cannabis to people without much instruction, without much regulation. And although many people have eaten too much over the course of the year and a half that we've been doing this, and I ask everybody, have you had that experience? Oh yeah, I ate too much one time. You gonna do that again? No, I try not to do that anymore. Are you still gonna use cannabis? Yeah, I'm still gonna use cannabis. It's great.
Of course.
So
that's hilarious. No.
So it should, it really should show the governing bodies the lack of harm that can be associated with cannabis, even if it's edible and concentrated form. And we should be able to get cannabis edibles back in dispensaries, you would think, to have access for people to address it. Because we're giving it away for free to the people that can't afford it. But the people that can afford it, they should have access to cannabis edibles, from some sort of a storefront for sure.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Not just that place, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To have edibles banned was unconscionable. From the city of Vancouver to ban edibles is unconscionable.
A lot of people can't smoke, right? And they can't. They
Absolutely.
Can't take it in their lungs, or they have lung infections.
Well, and edibles is a different form of ingestion, but it's also a different way of manifesting itself in the human body. It goes through the liver instead of the lungs. It's a longer, slower process, but it's more potent. It's got more power to it. It lasts a much longer time as well. And you can really eat too much, whereas you can't really smoke too much. If you smoke too much, you're probably just going to nod off by the time you
fall asleep.
But if you eat too much, well, it can be very uncomfortable. You can lose a couple of days of not being able to get out of bed. Your head can feel real thick, or that kind of stuff. It won't kill you. There's been no recorded deaths from it, but it's not a very comfortable experience for sure.
Feel the best.
Yeah, exactly. In the right dose, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's such an amazing herbal remedy that we have here for so many things. But in the wrong dose, it's like anything else, right? You don't want to overdo things. So.
You don't want to abuse that.
Yeah.
Of course not.
So how long have you been involved with the Cannabis Substitution Project?
Well, I started it, it's almost 2 years ago now that I had the concept of it and decided this is what we had to do. And then from there I went first to the user group, to VANDU. VANDU is the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. They were formed about 20-some years ago in Vancouver to address a health crisis that happened at that time with overdose deaths. And they're a group of users. Their motto is nothing about us without us. And they are the ones that are on the board. There's about 20 board members, and they're all, from the downtown east side. There's 2 paid staff from Coastal Health that sort of, just help to guide things a little bit, to give advice, but really it's all run by the people on the downtown east side. It's been going on, like I say, for over 20 years. They're funded by Coastal Health. And they have a great reputation within the media world, within the authorities, as far as listening to them. And they've advocated for an awful lot of harm reduction methods over the years that have been adopted. They were one of the main forces behind Insight, the supervised consumption site, and all of that as well. So I went to them first and told them, this is what I want to do. I want to come here and give out a bunch of edibles to people and tell them that it's because this will help them get off of that. And I got unanimous approval from their board to go to City Hall, and present to them and see if we could get some funding and some support and approval And so I did that, and they wouldn't even talk to me. Kerry Jang would hang up on me when I phoned him. They listened to what I had to say, and there was no questions, and there was no feedback, and they wouldn't let me talk to them. So I had a friend of mine, he's a lawyer. His father is a lawyer that's worked with City Hall for a long time, for about 30 years. And he spent a couple of months trying to bug them into talking to me about it and doing something with us. And to no avail. I also, by the way, went to the police board and presented to them what the idea was. Wasn't looking for anything from them other than to just tell them this is what we're going to do.
And behind their backs, right?
Yeah, you know, we're very upfront about what we're doing, and we think it's the right thing to do, and that the laws are wrong. And I've been very upfront about that for a long time. And so the police, they just, came and shook my hand and said, "Thank you. Sounds like a good idea. We're not going to bug you," that sort of thing. And then during the next couple of months of lobbying the city, I also was lobbying friends of mine in the dispensary industries to get on board and help me out with some donations. And so when I had enough donations in place, it was late February, a year and a half ago now, I just went to Van Du and said, "Okay, I got a bunch of boxes of stuff here. Maybe if we just set up this table and then, we'll just sort of announce it out." And so I did that, gave it all away. And then I went out and gathered up a bunch more, and then I came back and gave it away. And they were always like, "Well, when are you going to come back?" I did that like several times.
Yeah.
And actually, no, this is not late February. This is probably late January. So I did that several more times, just sort of randomly. And then there was like 3 Saturdays in a row. It just sort of worked out that I'd spend all week putting stuff together, and then I'd show up at noon on Saturday. So 3 times in a row. And I never announced it. I never said I'm coming on this day or anything. But on that 4th Saturday in a row, there was a long lineup of people, and that was in late February. And I went, "Wow, you people are all here to get free cannabis?" And they went, "Yeah." And I went, "Wow, okay." In my head, I said, "Well, obviously we're doing this every Saturday now." Wow. So that's why we went every Saturday for a full year. And the lineup was huge. There was some issues because the lineup was so big every Saturday. And so I appealed to the board that we change it and not have it on a Saturday. And I wanted to go 3 days a week, and they said they'd give me approval for 2 days a week. So we decided to go Sundays and Thursdays to try to split it up a bit. Okay. I'm not sure why I thought I could do 3 days a week, because 2 days a week is actually pretty overwhelming.
Oh, man, that must be.
But yeah, now we are going to change again. We've been 6 months at twice a week. We got some really good people behind us. The Movement people who've been big donators recently also want to rent a storefront and allow us to occupy that storefront with them. It's going to be a medicinal cannabis dispensary. And we're going to have the Cannabis Substitution Project giveaway on a daily basis with people properly registered as to being part of it. And then we can also figure out there's another, just on that note, the BC statistics people are coming to get some empirical evidence about what we're doing there. That's starting next week as well. And so that we will start to get to know each individual person a little better as to what it is that's working for them now that they have experience with it as well. It's usually the same people every week with some new people every time as well. But certainly the ones that have been coming for a long time, they've got a pretty good handle on what works for them. Lots of times at the table they'll say, "Well, can I trade you the cookie for another gummy, or can I have just joints instead of those?" And what we would like to do, the idea was always to tailor to an individual person what their particular needs are and give them enough that they don't need to ever think about anything else. And in this case, we're just giving them random bags that we put together and say, "There you go," with a little bit of tweaking. Like I say, some people do say, "Can I do this and that?" But typically it's just a bag, "Here you go, don't eat too much," and see you in 3 or 4 days. So wow. Yeah, it's evolving. It's a wonderful program. It's grown a life of its own, of course, and the volunteers and the people that are taking part in it are shaping it, to be what it is.
Wow, that's crazy. And I'm sure other people too, seeing you guys do something so big like that, it's helping other people to go out there.
There's other groups that are doing what we're doing because of what we're doing.
Exactly.
I consult.
Others.
Yeah, there's probably 3 days don't go by that I've not got somebody contacting me from someplace. I was talking to somebody in Australia last week that wants to do the same thing there. And in fact, there's someone from Australia coming here in a week to spend 3 days or 3 events to see what we're doing to help monitor. They're doing it in Victoria. There's a harm reduction group there called Solid, and they took over our concept, and they're doing that there. back in Peterborough. They're all over the place. It's starting up. And now the evidence is really coming in too. There's a lot of peer-reviewed studies about how cannabis is effective for dealing with people with chronic pain and as a substitution for other things. And it's not just a substitute. People on the opioids report that they need to use less opioids if they're using cannabis at the same time because it amplifies the effects of the opioids as it does with other drugs as well. So that they need to use less, which is also easier on them, especially if it's street drugs, because many times it's tainted with different fillers and things that the real harm is in the fillers and stuff that they put in that a lot of times. So yeah. Harm reduction, let's not kill these poor people. And just I want to say something about who these people are. The downtown east side is famous for its drug dealing and for the homelessness and for the addiction issues that are down there. And I've been down there since 2004 is when I quit my real job to operate a place called the Vancouver School of Drug War History right at Main and Hastings. We were there for 3.5 years. It was the second dispensary in Vancouver. And what I learned there is the people, I don't want to say these people, it doesn't sound right, but the people that we're talking about are people that they describe them as having suffered conjunctive trauma, that usually starting in early childhood, many times with childhood sexual abuse, but lots of other traumas that happen to people in childhood as well, the loss of a parent or the breakup of a marriage, many different things that traumatize people. And some people really have a hard time dealing with that for the rest of their lives. And addiction, not just drug addiction, but addiction in general is becoming understood as a response to a void that's in people's lives. They don't feel connected. They feel disconnected from their family, from their communities, because of the trauma that's happened to them, they feel this void in their lives. And addiction seems to be a response to that. And if it's not managed properly, it can be a real problem in people's lives. And now that we've got opioid addiction being, tainted with fentanyl on the street, we've got many people even dying because they're in that cycle of addiction and they can't stop, even though they know that risk is there when they're buying that flap or whatever they're buying. They know that risk is there. But if you're caught up in that cycle, if you've had any taste of it, it's a very difficult thing. And these are not just people that should be punished for making bad choices in their lives. These are people that are the abused children of our society that are having trouble dealing with life. They don't do well in the workplace. They don't do well in relationships. They end up spiraling down into poverty. They end up on the downtown east side because that's where there's all the services for people that are in those kind of problems. And there's other people there that are a community to them, other people that have had similar experiences that they can relate to. Unfortunately, because of drug prohibition, we've got a bunch of drug dealers that are preying upon those people instead of them being under the supervision of a proper healthcare professional and being able to access whatever it is that works for them. We've got this system in place of drug prohibition that just drives an illegal industry and people that prey on those poor people that are down there. And we really need to stop doing what we're doing with the prohibiting drugs and making possession of drugs and the use of drugs a criminal offense. When there's no crime involved in that, it's simply somebody that doesn't feel okay. They think this is a channel to feel okay, and wouldn't you if you were there too? There, but for the grace of God, go any one of us. And so yeah, we really need to address what's going on there. And there would be no overdose deaths from fentanyl if there wasn't drug prohibition. There'd be no street drug gangs selling drugs to people. If adults could go and get what it is that they think they need for themselves, if they could have proper guidance and healthcare professionals helping them in that, then we wouldn't have all of these horrible issues that we're having. And that, the government needs to do something about that, because it's drug prohibition and that ideology that is driving all of these problems with drug abuse and with the deaths of the streets. We would still have drug abuse issues even if we didn't have prohibition, but we would have reasonable ways of dealing with that. We wouldn't criminalize people, drive it all underground, stigmatize them. If it's your family member and they're struggling in life and they've got an addiction going on, what can you do as a family, right? Basically all you can do is love them, support them, hold a mirror up to them as often as possible and say, are you okay, man? Are you all right, Yeah. And if they say, fuck off, leave me alone, then what can you do, right? because they're going to continue to do what they think is the response to what, you don't lock them in a basement room. You don't tie them up and put them in a cage. You don't put a sign around them and say, hey, don't hire this person, they're a bad person, or anything like that, right? And especially if they're family, and you know that that family member went through hell with that uncle or with this, you would have compassion for them. And we need to have compassion for these people, not stigmatize them as bad people and call them criminals and all the rest that we do in this society, all to just really support the interests of big pharma, big drug companies, government profiteering on alcohol and all of those other things that drive these lies that they tell about the drugs that people could use. And when used properly, they're not bad drugs, they're not bad experiences with drugs. Drugs help people when they're used properly in the right circumstances. It's like a crutch with a broken leg. And if you have a broken leg, well, you're not going to use a crutch because it's a crutch? You got a broken heart. You're not going to use a little bit of something to make you feel better, chocolate or whatever it is, It's nobody's right. Is kind of what it is mainly for me, and I'm sort of babble on here for a long time.
No.
It's good.
You're putting us
You're
on some
helping
game.
people
Yeah.
understand, and that's what we.
Yeah.
That's
It
why
is.
we're happy to have you here. 'Cause
It's nobody's right to tell another person what they should and shouldn't do unless they're hurting somebody else, right? We all have a natural right, a right to not be bullied. Nobody gets to tell us that we have to do shit we don't want to do or that we can't do something after we're no longer kids, right? But you're brought here and you're allowed to be bullied legally. These people, hopefully they love you. Hopefully they're not too stupid. Hopefully they're not too messed up. But they get to say, no, you can't do that. And yep, you're going to do that, or no dinner tonight, or right? But when you get to that point and you say, I love you people, thank you, I appreciate what you've tried to do for me, but now all your values are not all my values, and I'm going to go live my life as who I am. Nobody else ever gets to tell you to do shit you don't want to do or you can't do what you want, right? It doesn't matter what badge they got. It doesn't matter how big they are. Well, maybe. But, what hat they're wearing or what uniform they have on or how many of them there are. But it does matter if they're super big. It does matter if they're going to point a gun at you or put you in a cage and all of those sorts of things. But it doesn't make it right, and it's never been right. We have what we're called a free country here because our forefathers were willing to, hide in ditches and get shot at to try to get this generation, us, the people that came after them, the freedom that they were afraid we were going to lose. And that freedom should mean that our rights are respected like that and that we do have those, but instead we live in a corrupt world where big corporate interests and the financial elite get access to our politicians behind closed doors, and they get to bribe them or threaten them or whatever goes on behind closed doors, but they usually get their way, right? They got huge budgets and they probably got pictures and whatever it takes to get this guy to do what you want him to do. And so that's kind of our system where it's a dumbocracy. We all vote for a particular power or party that gets into power, but it's not supposed to be a 4-year revolving dictatorship. It's supposed to be that they're public servants. They should be completely transparent in what they do. There shouldn't be closed door meetings with leaders of industry and people with big budgets and pictures. Everything they do, we should be aware of. If we can afford bombs to drop on people in other countries, then we should be able to afford a little 2 or 3 man film crew to go with every one of our MPs, members of parliament. And just from the time they leave their home in the morning till they get home at night, and they can't do any other work in the off time, right? That we get to see what they're doing. But if they want to sit down with a leader of industry and negotiate where they're going to spend public money on this or that, that's fine. That's what they do. But let's see that. Let's also be able to put up on our cell phones, MP watch, I see what my MP's doing, I see what your MP's doing, and, then we get to know. And then they should, at the end of it, say, okay, well, you saw, folks, look into his camera there and say, okay, well, you saw negotiations with this guy, and these guys have made their presentations, and I'm going to choose these ones because of these reasons, and we would have better people doing a better job if we had them being transparent. And the other side of it is accountability. That right now, they can go behind those closed doors, they can make all those deals with these bribers and threateners, and there's no accountability unless you got some major black and white paper trail as to, corruption and money being transferred. And it doesn't work that way, right? They're protected in those positions like the justice minister and the prime minister and those people in those real interesting positions of power in our country. They're protected by their corporate friends. They're going to be looked after afterwards by their corporate friends. Once they're no longer in public office, they're going to be sitting on a beach with a laptop and a phone, and they're going to be paid $100,000 a month probably to just be an advisor, to be a consultant to these industries that want to have these consultants that are ex-politicians because they want to know how to get to the next guy that's sitting in that desk. And, how can you advise us on how to threaten and bribe a little better than we did, right? So it's a corrupt system that we've got here still. We're working on it. There's rhetoric and there's more happening, but we need public servants that are accountable, that are limited, that are transparent in what they do. They can't make or enforce rules that override any individual's right to be who they want to be and do what they want to be if they're not harming anybody else. And that's kind of, for me, the world that I'm looking for. Legalizing weed is just, for me, the way to get there. It's a different consciousness. It's a spirit of ethics and cooperation and love. And that's how we need to be doing business and respecting each other, not in this world of fear and alcohol-based, anger-based, stuff that they love to have us all involved with, so we're all divided and mad at each other and we don't have enough money and, too many different issues. We don't know which way to go. No, we need a love-based society, one that uses the sacred herb to communicate with each other and to get some guidance with ethics, because that's what it does for me. Is it helps me think, man. It helps me go, is that right? Is that wrong? Yeah. Do I want to hurt this person? No, I don't. I want to give this person. I want to make his life better. Hey, that makes me feel better. Hey, I love that. And that's kind of the spirit of weed. Is like everybody win-win and all that love and stuff. Is
a lot of compassion in cannabis for sure.
It does. I don't know why. I don't understand. It's just a plant. It's got some crystals on it.
It's a really great plant, though.
But it is, man. It brings people together,
We've grown up with this plant, right? Like for millennia. It's an ancient plant. It's got the male and the female going on. It's not insect pollinated. It's wind pollinated. So that tells you that it's a very, very ancient plant. And they always told me, you are what you eat. But I figured out that no, you can tweak what you are with what you eat, but you've got a particular design and a body type and all of that because of what your ancestors ate. For millennia, what we have eaten. As each generation evolves and with the food that they've eaten, that's what your body uses to build all that our bodies are. And many of those essential and crucial things in our body, our immune system, how our eyes work, and all of those things are overseen by what they had to call the endocannabinoid system. That when they tried to prove that there was no medical value to cannabis, instead they found out that there's receptor sites in the human body that interact with the chemistry of the cannabis plant. Well, holy shit, because that's really complicated, and there shouldn't be some outside thing that can actually bind with your receptor site and make it work, because a receptor site is like a lock, and what would bind with that is a key that will go into that lock. But it's not just some little simple lock, it's a very, very complicated set of chemistry that's going on there. And yet here's this plant that produces these same chemicals that our body is creating. And they figured that out. So they had to call this new system that they discovered because of this, the endo or interior cannabinoid system, because our human bodies, even if you're not ingesting cannabis in any form, creates the same things that are these cannabinoids that works with us. The anandamide that is the same as the THC and all these other things. And the reason for that is because our ancestors for millennia, for many, many thousands and millions of years, have been consuming cannabis as a staple food source. So that's why, it's because we're made of this plant. This plant made our bodies. That's why it works with us the way that it does. We need it. It's like, a cop said to me 20 years ago, he said, I think you're on weed. I said, we all are, all the time. Have you heard about the endocannabinoid system? Yeah, we are weed. That's it.
You said that to the cop.
I said that to the cop.
So cool.
We have a symbiotic relationship with this plant. And we used to eat it a lot more than we eat it now. You can go buy hemp hearts. I don't know if you're eating hemp hearts. You should. And that's without the shell. They take the shell off, but the shell's good. The shell's like 6% protein. It's not bad for you. It cleans your teeth as you eat it. But they take that off and they sell hemp hearts, and you can mix it into salads and soups and anything you want. It's awesome.
Crazy.
Super good
We
for
don't eat very much.
protein and amazing.
But we used to eat a lot. We used to eat it a lot in soup and gruel, and made bread out of it and all kinds of other stuff like that. But more than that, before there was bucker fields that farmers went to buy feed for their livestock, they fed them cannabis. That's what we fed that's what farmers fed their livestock, especially in the wintertime. Because in the wintertime there's not much. And what they would do is they all grew hemp, to feed their livestock, to make, and their families as well, and for the other things that hemp was good for. Hemp was a mandatory crop in the United States from 1617 to 1895, or 1795, because all people that got land from the federal government, they were required to grow apples and for a drink source because you couldn't trust the water, and they were required to have cannabis for all that it was good for, the fiber and the food and all the rest of it.
Textiles.
So it was a mandatory crop for a long time in the United States, and then it became illegal. And in the 30s, because Popular Mechanics had declared to everybody that, hey, cannabis is going to be our first $1 million crop, folks, in the United States. This is off. Billion? Was it billion back then? In the 30s?
Billion.
In the 30s? So it might have been billion.
I know it's billion. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Anil. He's always on for the correct facts.
Fact check.
Okay, the first $1 billion crop. And so that, I guess, kind of scared some people about their crops that weren't cannabis and what could they do. And they kind of went to war against this $1 billion crop that was going to compete with Dow Chemicals and the cotton industry and the fuel industry and a whole bunch of other industries that cannabis competes with, because it grows all this biomass. In about 100 days, you get about 10 feet of biomass, and these amazing seeds that are fantastic food, fuel source, all the rest of it. So they literally overnight, or within a year, they came up with the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act, where everybody, all the farmers, because all the farmers were growing hemp, everybody had at least an acre of hemp on a hobby farm, and there was huge fields of hemp. They all had to now get a license from the government to produce that cannabis and that hemp, and it was cost prohibitive. But the real trick was that they didn't get the certificates to the towns. So when the farmers were going to the town, the government office saying, okay, I'm going to put in my hemp crop or my cannabis crop, I need to get my license, they'd say, hey, we don't have our licenses, they haven't been delivered yet, we're not sure what to do. And then what they became what they were sure to do was give you an incentive to grow something else this next year. So literally within that one season, they flipped most of the farms in the United States from growing hemp into growing cotton and other things that they gave them incentives for. And so that, you know, and then the history's amazing. I mean, it's a huge conspiracy. It's cost us so much.
I've heard that too.
Just to come right back around.
I was just telling you, I was watching conspiracy theories, and there was something about like weed, mushrooms, and just how, like, you know, nobody, the government or whatever, doesn't want that because it really reacts with your mind in like a positive way, though.
Well, that's what Nixon said. We can't have all these young people sitting around smoking weed and thinking about whether they want to pay taxes or not or go to war, you know. But yeah,
asking questions.
That's crazy.
That's for sure. It became dangerous, you know, to the governments when they realized that the hippie movement was being fueled by cannabis, that they were sitting around smoking weed and thinking about things, and that's dangerous.
Yeah,
that's dangerous when humans think.
That's right. Well, if you're the guys in control and you're exploiting these poor humans, you know, and you're doing things that aren't right,
no, for sure,
you know, you'd be a little concerned if they start thinking about shit.
We're back in that state
this
now.
Real? No, that's
just
real.
Kind of back out of it.
So I have a question for you. What trial have you been attending this week?
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, the city of Vancouver decided to regulate dispensaries back in 2015 or 2016 when there became like 150 of them, and a whole bunch more were looking like they were going to open. And so, for whatever their personal reasons were, I'm not sure, but they said it was because they saw these dispensaries as a problem and the continuing proliferation of being a problem, that they decided to license them. Maybe they were doing it to try to protect people, to give them a place to buy weed. You know, I suggested to them at the time that they declare Vancouver to be a sanctuary for cannabis users and allow these things. But they didn't adopt that approach. They adopted the approach of licensing some of them. Mm-hmm. And the licensing requirements and the regulations that went along with them were extremely onerous. They eliminated 7 different revenue streams, for example. And they didn't allow vapor lounges. They didn't allow for edibles. They didn't allow for people under 19 years of age. They didn't allow for home delivery. They didn't allow for mail order. And so a bunch of people in Vancouver went and talked about that and said, no, this isn't right. We really appreciate regulations and being mainstream businesses. That's awesome. But don't
do all of these things. Edibles are really necessary for many of our medical patients, and vapor lounges should be mandatory, not banned, and a bunch of other concerns that we all had. But they went ahead and did that, and effectively, and what we saw coming, and the reasons we were upset about it, many of us that spoke there, almost all 200 people were in favor of regulations, not in favor of those regulations, and worried that the regulations that they were bringing in were actually going to shut down most of the dispensaries. And that is what happened. That is effectively what happened. A whole bunch of dispensaries had to close down. They harassed them with fines. They harassed the landlords with threatening property seizures and other things like that. So here we are. There's now 19 of them that have licenses. There's another 45 in queue that could get licenses depending on how it works down the road. And there's about 100 or so that are operating outside of the system, or 85, I think they said, that won't ever get a license, have been threatened and are being fined regularly or whatever that is happening. But they're not wanting to close down. The city brought injunctions against all of those. And what's happening in court is this is a response to those injunctions that would shut them down if the police would act on the injunctions. In effect, what they're doing is they're arguing that Vancouver City had no legal right to license any of these dispensaries, that it's a criminal act to sell weed, and there's no provision within the Criminal Code of Canada or within Canada to be able to sell weed or be a city that facilitates the selling of weed. And in fact, they were aiding and abetting in the criminal sale of this controlled substance. Not only that, and this is where Vancouver City, in my mind, really sinks themselves, although there's a number of different ways that they sink themselves. They're in a fair bit of trouble here, is the $30,000 licensing fee. Talk about taking away revenue streams. They also added a $30,000 license fee.
Like a liquor store.
Which is like, well, a liquor store is about $800 or something like that. Right?
No
a pharmacy is
way.
like $175.
Very few business licenses cost that much.
Oh, nothing costs that much. Nothing costs.
A strip club, I think.
I never
maybe.
knew that.
No. The closest thing that comes to that is $15,000 a year, and that's a one-time deal for the P&E, which is 250 businesses in one for 2 weeks of the year, or whatever,
So
however
they
long they run.
probably just-
The next closest is the big casinos at $12,000, and then there's like $8,000 to $10,000 for the massage parlors and those sorts of things. And those are sin taxes because they want to keep people from going there. We're talking about medical cannabis dispensaries that the courts have said repeatedly Canadians deserve to have access to medical cannabis, and that storefronts is at the heart of access.
Why is dispensary access important?
Well, the system that we've had without dispensary access has been through first the MMAR, where the government allowed for people to grow for themselves, or people to have a designated grower, or to people to buy from the government supply online. They then tried to bring in the MMPR, which was going to eliminate the MMAR and people's ability to grow for themselves or have it grown for them. So now they would just have to use the online system. And that was fought in court in the Allard decision after the cannabis community raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, paid the lawyers to argue our case, and we won. That people should have the right to grow for themselves, and designated growers, and that the designated growers should be able to grow for more people than just one, and then the government made it 2. And that was appealed, and then they made it 4. But in the spirit of, hey, let's make it easy, that's what they've never done. And so we've won these cases over and over again. And so as it stands, the system of medical access, other than growing for yourself and having a designated grower, is only through an online mail order system. Well, that works great for some people who have computers and bank accounts and credit cards and a residence and
ID.
And they don't mind ordering online, and they don't think they need to smell it ahead of time, and they don't need to be consulting with anybody because there's no ability for these. In fact, they're not allowed to tell you about the benefits of the different things or the different strains and how they may benefit you. And same with these in the new legalization regime. It's very similar to that. You'll be able to order online, and you'll be able to, from these same licensed producers, and you'll be able to go into a storefront, but the storefront will only have prepackaged cannabis with labels, and you can't see it, and there's no ability to see it. The shopkeepers can't even look at it. It all comes to them prepackaged from the provincial liquor authority.
It's so sad.
I know.
Sorry.
It ain't the way we buy weed, eh? It ain't the way we buy weed. You know, we learned through Prohibition, man. You don't buy shit in a brown paper bag that you don't get to see and smell.
Yeah.
So the government thinks they can pull that off. I don't think that's going to work very well for them. I ain't buying their shit. That's for sure.
It's safe to say I don't think.
And certainly not if I can't even look at it ahead of time. And even then, I don't trust them because they allow people to spray stuff on there. I don't want my growers spraying that shit. I don't trust no government weed.
No government
So
weed.
That's that Reggie.
And unless they're licensing my grower friends to be licensed producers, and then they're not telling my grower friends that they have to spray chemicals or irradiate or whatever it is that they're making these people do, I ain't touching their shit. So I want that to happen. I want licensed producers to be my grower friends, and I don't want them to have to go through a bunch of bullshit that ain't good for you and me. I want organic weed where the grower cares about us, not about how much money that they can make or whether they have to satisfy some stupid regulation about a lack of microbes on a flippin' medicinal herb when there's microbes on every fruit and vegetable you buy in the store, and microbes aren't all necessarily bad for you, and I don't want no government killing microbes because they might be bad for me with some fucking chemicals that I know are bad for me. So yeah, don't want to buy government weed at this point yet for sure. And so that's the answer, is that the medical system at this point of access to cannabis that doesn't involve storefronts involves those things. And for people without credit cards, bank accounts, residences and all that, it doesn't work at all. And for people that think they need to go in there and let their nose tell them whether those terpenes represent a strain that they know gives them the relief they're looking for, it ain't working for them either. And a lot of other reasons that you need to have a storefront right there. The online distribution doesn't work quick. So if you've got a condition like epilepsy or migraine headaches, which we found out in court can be deadly. It's a serious medical condition to get migraines. They can kill you. You need to be able to, who hasn't gone to the drugstore in late at night to get something for a friend that's been in need of something, or hasn't been searching for something because they're in need? Well, if you want to get cannabis, you got to make an appointment with your doctor. He's got to approve you to go to a licensed producer. You got to register with them, and then they'll ship it out to you in a day or 3. Well, that's not going to help somebody who needs it right away. And in fact, that's ridiculous. In fact, for all these other harsh, toxic pharmaceuticals that are being offered by this doctor and controlled by them, and for good reason, because they're dangerous, right? And doctors probably should be the gatekeepers of the dangerous stuff. But they'll give you that they are convinced that you're in enough pain or whatever they think, and they'll write you a script for it. And you got it in a half an hour or less than that. There's a pharmacy right next door. Yeah. There's no waiting through people to mail it to you and all the rest of that shit. So that's ridiculous.
I've picked up opiates on behalf of someone else. My partner, I was able to pick them up for him. Just like go into Walmart and grab them under a completely different name. Like it's ridiculous.
It's not difficult access.
Yeah,
it's really not difficult access. And now we're talking about that compared to accessing this herb, which has been declared by Judge Francis Young in 1989, a DEA judge in the United States, declared that cannabis was the safest therapeutically active compound found in nature. Mm-hmm. So the safest therapeutically active compound found in nature doesn't need to be controlled by your doctor. A whole bunch of other compounds aren't controlled by your doctor that you can buy in any drugstore that you walk into. A whole bunch of them. They'll all kill you if you eat too much of it. Yeah. Cannabis won't even kill you if you eat too much of it. But not only that, you can buy whiskey anytime you want, man. You can walk into a store and buy whiskey. Yeah, they sell commercial tobacco, which kills millions of humans every 12 months. There's another 5 or 6 million humans dead from that shit. You can buy that in every gas station and corner store in Canada. So, give me a break that we're wasting tax dollars in a courtroom with 10 fucking lawyers, this half being paid for by tax dollars, this half being paid for by patients, and they're arguing about whether people should be able to walk into a store and buy some medicinal cannabis product in a world where you can buy whiskey and cigarettes and alcohol and pesticides and gasoline and white sugar and all that shit like nothing. So this is all just an exercise in wasting our money for no good reason to come up with rulings that we're still going to have to probably fight down the road. Yep. We're not done yet with these assholes who want
all for their
this.
Wants.
All for their wants, all for corporate greed and the desire to control us.
Someone said the government is just waiting to be challenged in court. So
and you know what? You're right. And you know what? That's criminal. For the government to be enacting laws that they know are going to land them right back in court is criminal. They need to do their due diligence ahead of time. Have all of those scenarios worked out ahead of time so that we don't end up in court, because they don't have a least bit of ethics about how much of our money they waste in courts. They'll throw money at lawyers.
They don't care.
Yeah, I think because the lawyers are their nephews and their nieces and friends of theirs.
They don't care.
It's a big club, man, and we're not part of it. Like,
hell yeah, that's exactly how it is.
it's exactly how it is.
Exactly how it is.
And the club should be ours, because there's more of us than them. And we're better than them, because we're nicer people.
Straight up.
We wouldn't fuck them over like they're fucking us over.
Fuck
you know?
no.
It's just not right. So, you know, I'm glad things are going the way they're going, that these court cases are happening, that the media is doing what they're doing. And, you know, we're going to have all these conversations, and we're winning them all. We've won all the court cases so far. We're winning all the conversations in the public court of opinion. And, you know, the science is following up in behind us now. And the corporate world is on top of it, because they're selling stocks in cannabis, you know, futures and shit.
Yeah.
So they want it to succeed too. And, you know, hell, if not that, well, there's an opioid crisis, and cannabis helps people get off opioids. So, you know, if that's the only reason we need, let's just do that.
You gotta keep doing that good work.
Exactly.
Cannabis substitution project.
Literally, because if you're doing it for the people, you know, that's what you're showing the government. They're not doing any which way part of it for the people.
This
you
is
know what I
all
mean? It's
about
all for
patience.
them. Exactly.
All about patience.
All
That
it is.
courtroom there, everything they're talking about there, that's all just about the patients. It's about sick and suffering Canadians, and whether or not they should be able to walk into a store and get a herbal remedy that would work for them with no side effects other than maybe getting a little bit hungry or a little bit sleepy. But, you know, nothing like the side effects you got in drug stores. We got a world full of drug stores, and they're all good. But, you know, you can't have a herb store. Like,
with so many benefits,
it's a sick upside down world. Yeah.
Sick. It is. It's
sick
cruel,
because greed
sick.
is an illness, and it's taken over
yeah.
some of those people in high towers and fancy planes, and they think they own all our asses, and they think that we're just people to be taken advantage of, and fuck us all. Well, fuck them. And you know, thanks to all the people that are helping do all these things on all these fronts. We used to be a small group of activists. You know, we're sitting in a very powerful place here in Vancouver. This particular piece of property has been the heart of activism in Canada for a very long time. Since Mark Emery opened it, he used to have a place across the street, and they used to bust him. They try to bust you out of existence. In fact, I should mention that for a moment. In court, they talked about the city of Vancouver was advised by the VPD that what they were doing was criminal and they shouldn't do it. But with respect to whether or not they were going to shut these places down, the VPD said, well, you know, there's no real harm that's happening in the communities as a result of these dispensaries that we're there to stop. And we've got real harm going on in other places in the city that we're kind of dealing with. And we have tried to stop some of them for some reasons, but they seem to open right back up the next day, and in some cases that same afternoon once we're gone. And the only people we're ever charging are the employees that work there. So, you know, to actually get to the people behind those dispensaries, well, that's a long undercover investigation. That's a lot of money and time. And we just don't see the community harm that's happening to do that. So they declined, and that's what the VPD said about it. So, you know, and that, yeah, that's the thing is that, you know, cannabis is a benefit to society, right? You listen to all this conversation now about how they're going to legalize and regulate, and everybody wants money. The municipalities, the province, they all want money to cover the costs of legalizing. Well, the whole idea was stop spending money on
They're so deep in it, they're like, we need to pay for our lawyers. Even our nephews are asking for money now.
You know, it was a waste of tax dollars from the beginning. Stop paying police, courts, and cage people, you know, money to do with anything to do with cannabis. Yeah. But this legalization, I mean, it's brilliant the way they did it. It's like they thought about what we were saying, because we wore bracelets for a long time, and all of us that spoke at these rallies were saying legalize and regulate, you know, and they thought about it like, I think we can probably do that for them, you know. We'll legalize it so they can have weed if they buy it off of us, and we'll regulate it so that nobody gets to sell it but us. And the law enforcement, well, they're still going to be able to make their money, because that's one of the big constituents here is law enforcement doesn't want to stop getting their budgets filled for, you know. So we'll give them even more money and make up even more criminal offenses and come down even harder on people that are dealing outside of our little club over here. And the gangs, well, they can have everybody under 19 still, so they're all good. It's like everybody that was feeding off of us. We're all the losers in prohibition, but there's the gangs that make a ton of money. There's the cops that make a ton of money. There's, and we're the prey of those people, and we wanted that to stop, and it ain't stopping with this legalization. The cops are getting more money. The gangs still get all the under 19s, and they're going to get everybody else too, because people are only going to go to a government store once if they're stupid, and never again after that, because, yeah, well, the smart ones aren't going at all. The stupid ones will go once, but they probably ain't going twice. Because somebody's going to say, hey, you can go to Buddy's house. He's got 6 different jars. You can sniff them before you buy them, and let me see what you got in your bag here. Oh yeah. That guy's not going back there again. He's a fool. So, yeah, man, it's a crazy world we're living in. It's kind of fun and interesting, except people are being hurt along the way, and
it just sucks. There's so many people that won't know that they're being screwed over. There are a lot of people that have waited for access to cannabis, and so it's sad that their first access to cannabis is just not going to be.
Well, thanks to shows like yours and people like you and all of us talking about it. And that's kind of the thing I was going to say before is there used to be just a handful of activists, like right across Canada. There was just a handful of activists before the internet, before, I don't know when it all sort of really started, but man, in the last 8, 9 years, 10 years maybe, just like there's so many people that identify as activists in our world.
It's getting closer to the point where almost everyone who smokes weed, they all
they get it.
for it. They stand up for it.
You gotta stand up for your rights,
they're
man.
Not hiding, trying to smoke.
That's right.
it.
They're saying this is good. I like this. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not, right?
I'm not hurting nobody.
That's right. And back before I quit my job to do this, and then decided to call myself an activist, because you couldn't really call yourself anything but that. I'm a rights activist. That's what I call it. I didn't like pot activist, although I knew I, was a pot, because it's my lead issue for sure, and I was helping to organize the pot rallies and doing things about weed, traveling across Canada with a Canadian flag, and stuff. Yeah. So, for sure. But back then, it wasn't cool to be an activist. No. People that were activists were a little bit crazy. They were out there, you weren't sure about them. But these days, they're the smart people. They're the people who really care about their communities and what's going on, and they're standing up saying, hey, this ain't right, because there's a lot of things that ain't right, and we need people to point them out. We can't be just all floating through life. I know you get a job, you get a wife, you get a family, you get a life, and all that stuff happens, and then you're busy, but, it's important that you find a niche somehow, even amongst all of that, to do something, Speak to your co-workers, phone an anonymously an open line show, write a letter here or there, do something, because you should care, because it does matter. Lots of people in the mainstream tell me that they don't care about the pot issue. Yeah. Really? Because do you know how much of your tax dollars are being wasted? Like how much harder you have to work? How much money is being taken out of your family's mouth to pay for these cops? To pay for all this stuff that is prohibition and costing us all this money? It's a huge thing. More people are arrested in Canada for cannabis offenses than any other thing they're arrested for in Canada. And there's no crime at all. Yet that's what we're paying our police to do. And I say there's no crime because it's not a crime to break a bad law. That's a thing that good, responsible people do, is they break bad laws. It's the only way laws ever get changed, is break the bad laws. So a crime is intentionally, knowingly doing something that causes damage. You need all of those things. You need to know in your mind that what you're doing is going to cause damage, and then you need to have actually gone ahead and done it. It's mens rea, it's actus rea, it's the components of what is a crime. It's why we call criminals bad. It's what's bad about it is this person knew that they were going to harm this person or these people, and they still went ahead and did it for their own selfish reasons or anger, whatever it is. It's not right. You don't do it. It's wrong. And we've had our entire justice system undermined with these laws against drugs for all of this time, because it's never been a crime to have possession of or even trade with somebody something that you think is going to help make you feel better. You're not intentionally harming anybody. There is no victim in the courtroom. There's no intention, there's no knowledge that you, by smoking that joint, was going to cause some, and it's got to be significant damage too. It's got to be demonstrable damage. You need to be innocent until they prove, by demonstrating that you did this, and by showing the significance of it. We have the scales of justice with the older blindfolded matriarch and all that represents. Well, what those scales represent is that if they prove with proper evidence done properly through all the different ways that we have evolved, the way that we decide whether evidence is good or not, with good evidence. If they prove that you did damage, well, how much did you do? Well, how much did it weigh down that side of the set of scales? And then the judge is to give you a penalty that balances those scales. Well, this person stands before the judge. He's been found in possession of a bag of flowers. You know, where's the victim? Where was the intent to harm anybody? Where's the cost of any sort? There's none. And yet penalties are imposed, which undermines our respect for justice. It undermines our respect for police. It puts our police lives in danger, especially as we have organized criminal groups forming to satisfy the demand, which will always happen. If there's a demand, there will be a supply. That's a real law. You can't mess with those kind of laws, you know, up in gravity and, you know, supply and demand, and those things are real laws. So the government, by instituting this prohibition on people using these plants, it just causes an increase in demand. It causes a guaranteed underground supply. It's causing all of the problems that happen because of that underground supply. The violence that is used to settle discrepancies because there's no court that you can go to. And the harms with prohibition of cannabis, and I'm sure of opioids and coca as well, is immense, not just because of the costs of trying to enforce people from using it, but in the denial of people being able to use these things instead of alcohol, pharmaceuticals, commercial tobacco, and the other things. The people that are in pain, that need opioids, they need them in ways that would work for them, in proper dosages, in proper purity, overseen by healthcare professionals, things that work. Because people that are in serious pain, be it a missing leg or a missing person in their life, it's pain. It's tough to deal with. And there, but for the grace of God, go any one of us, and none of us should judge another on how much pain they've got because they lost their leg, or they lost their loved one, or they lost their innocence, or whatever. We all are geared to handle things differently. Nobody gets to be anybody else's gatekeeper or judge or anything like that. And that is what we have fought for as a people for generation, to get to where we are now. The forefathers that, like I said, took bullets before us to try to get us the freedom that we're trying to get still for ourselves. We're not there yet. We're still free to obey. We've got, you know, verbal, you know, stuff going on, rhetoric about freedom and free country and public servants and these sorts of things. We just need to keep pushing till all that's as real as it can be. That we have public servants that know they're servants to the public, that each member of the public is a sovereign being, a sovereign territory of their own, and that is respected by these public servants that are limited in whatever laws they can enact and enforce. They're transparent in everything that they do, so we get to see it because they're working for us, and they are accountable. If they sell us out, if they make laws to protect some private group at the expense of the majority, that is a heinous crime. Because if you're going to determine how much a crime is by how much weight there is on that side of the set of scales, and a public servant in that position of vulnerability who's holding the public's trust, if they violate that trust and enact through the signing of a paper a law that takes away your rights and our rights, if it denies you access to medicine that would help you, if all of these things that happened when they signed into law the prohibition of cannabis, they should be culpable and held responsible for all the damage that has cost. So we need to have a system that holds people more accountable, that makes them transparent in how they do things, limits them, and have them respect us. And if we had that, we would get a whole different breed of people as public servants. We would have people that knew that their job was to protect you and me and every individual from corporate groups and greedy, financially elite groups that will exploit us and monopolize us and use us and all the rest of that they do if we're not protected from them. So as a group of people, we should have public servants, and they should know that their job is to protect us from those groups that would take away the rights of individuals and force them into things they don't want and not let them do what they want to protect those people's interests. That's what the big crime is here. And that's why this drug prohibition era that we've lived through, or, you know, you were all born into it, I was born into it. I don't think there's anybody alive today that, you know, was born before they started this bullshit back around 1900 or so in the southern states. it's always been a way for us here, and we're going to work our way out of this, and it's going to be awesome, and it's what we need to have. It is the freedom that we've been fighting for as people for, you know, all these generations. We are at the forefront of this. This is the biggest story ever. They didn't just prohibit drugs because they were wrong about how to go about stopping drug abuse and people hurting themselves with drugs. They did it because they were making a ton of money at our expense, and they hurt people for fucking profit. And if that ain't a serious, heinous crime, I don't know what is. And every former prime minister and justice minister should be arrested and held trial for that. They've always known. They've known since the Dane Commission in 1969. They've known since the Senate report in 2002. They know today, they knew then. They are all criminals for holding those offices, taking those oaths, and then selling us out and continuing to maintain this sellout of us and our rights to these corporate groups that want to monopolize our consumption and what we do. So I've ranted for a long time here. They probably told my car by now.
Thank you so much. You really
well, thanks for having
educated us, of course.
I hope everyone understand, you know? That's what we all need to do.
It's kind of simple. It's freedom. It's the right. It's the right to do or not do whatever you want to do or don't want to do unless you're harming somebody else. And we all have that right. And we also all have a responsibility not to just not hurt other people, but to stop other people from hurting other people. That's a responsibility of an adult human being on this planet just because of what is right and wrong. That is right and wrong is you have a responsibility. Don't allow that bully to hurt that innocent person. Do what you can do to stop that. And so right now the bully is the government still, and the corporations that they're acting on behalf of. They are the bullies, we are the innocents, and it's not right, and everybody got to do something to stop that because it's our responsibility.
So let's get to it, people.
Right, man. Thank you so much for having this show, man, and getting the word out.
Thank you.
I hope I get to see you again.
Oh, you'll see us. I see you everywhere. I do.
Sorry about that.
No, we love it. We love it.
Thank you. I'll leave you one of these.
Perfect.
Oh, you got one
I got one. Yeah, I got one.
I'm going to go see what's going on with my car so we can get the in there.
Holy, I'm informed. Knowledge. I feel it stirring around.
Yeah, that was great.
That was so cool.
Everyone's like, amen, you know, I love it.
You know how to preach.
You dropped the mic, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's it's time to switch gears a little and get back into that video of the year. Let's pop.
Boom. Boom.
Okay. This week we got a doozy. We got a pretty good battle going on.
Doozy.
We got DynaMixx and Marsace with Trap Energy, and we got Rude Nala with Can't Hang here.
Okay.
So first we got DynaMixx. Both, I don't know who the second video was shot by, but this one's Dream of Creations. So cheers, Trap Energy, DynaMixx and Marsace.
Superstar, what the fuck have you created?
Trap energy, this that trap energy. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Yeah, trap energy, this that trap energy. 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 Strapped up all the burden, swerving, probably not off the bourbon. Leave your head wrapped like a turban. You get lapped up in a hurry, doing the dash van city to Surrey. Double lines stay blurry. I be trapped in a hustle permanently. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Yes.
Passing Laverne again. Passing Laverne. How many occupants are in this vehicle? Laramie and Madison, westbound. Laramie and Madison, westbound. She's trying to hit the cover. Who's saying eastbound? Who is saying eastbound? I'm 81 squad. I'm right behind the lead car. We're eastbound on Chicago. PH210-4. They're currently going northbound on Central.
Swagged up and I'm flexing. Yo, main bitch, I'm stretching. Sachi name ring bells. Classes in session. Where the fuck you think you stepping? Come to the V, make him change his direction. Marsace, stay with the blessings. All you fuck niggas just stay with the stressing. All of your bitches I'm sexing. Hop in the whip and she get to stretching. I almost crashed till she texting. I'm about to snap on this bitch in a second. Left wrist, right wrist froze. I ain't dapping. These niggas think they pause, but no, I ain't clapping. Might as well tell jokes, cause bro, you got me laughing. He say he wanna go, oh no, I ain't lacking. Just that trap energy, we that trap energy. Turn a good bitch to a bad bitch, a friend to an enemy. Haters talking down, then turn them into Kennedy. Yo bitch got a frown, tell her we got the remedy. I stay Louis down, looking down, they ain't ahead of me. Most of haters clowns, rest in peace cause they all dead to me. Sachi and DynaMixx, haters can't stand this. Nigga got that white, got that Molly and them tan chips. Come and take your bitch, paint her face like a canvas. Blood, sweat and tears to the people, they demand a Sachi. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Trap energy, this that trap energy. Yeah, trap energy. Yeah, trap
energy. Hey, trap energy. It's that trap energy. Yo, and they had a disclaimer at the beginning. Don't take that too seriously. Okay, here's the second video. Rude Nala can't hang here. Check it out. Check it out.
And they hear me. But fake family, I don't want that shit near me. Woke up this morning, thank God that I'm alive. Shit, I could've died, but he want me to survive. The same people that be looking at you dearly, the same ones turn my back and they fear me. Hold on, wait, I got too much shine. Yeah, they want me dying with it. Yeah, they wanna take my time. They nigga wanna fuck on me. They nigga wanna love on me. One day talking shit, next tryna hug on me. With that fake shit, if you ain't even talk to man, your energy betrayed it. Yeah, I got thick skin, so I can't beat it or sustain it. Y'all be looking messy, and my money I maintain it. Chains gon' be dangling, phone gon' be ringing. Boss in the cut, so y'all bitches you can't hang it. Outfit be slaying, this beat, yeah I slayed it. Hop in the coupe, and you know that we swinging. These bitches talking about me, they be hating on my commas. And you looking salty, but I really ain't with drama. I'm about to get this shit, I'm spitting like a llama. I'm about to make my money talk for all my problems. These bitches talking about me, but they really are not with it. I knew something was up since this hoe started acting distant. All about my money, that's the shit that make us different. You all about your mouth, but I be all about that ass. Gon' be dangling, phone gon' be ringing. Boss in the cut, so y'all bitches you can't hang here. Outfit be slaying, this beat, yeah I slayed it. Hop in the coupe, and you know that we swinging. Chains gon' be dangling, phone gon' be ringing. Boss in the cut, so y'all bitches you can't hang here. Outfit be slaying, this beat, yeah I slayed it. Hop in the coupe, and you know that we swinging. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's not like, yeah.
we'll start with you. What video? Which one you choosing?
The second one, Runala.
Runala?
Oh yeah.
I go with the second one.
Second one,
Yeah.
Runala? What about you?
And you already know my girl Nala.
Runala. Now, can you guys give me reasons why you guys are going with?
Yeah, I love that style of video. I love the kind of like horror, a little bit kind of creepy and
it's a
dark.
little creepy,
and
right?
Draws you in,
like the bathtub scene and all that stuff. That video, that's nice.
I'm
She
down
looking
for
fly
some
too.
creativity.
And like I always
you know,
support
some
like
effects.
a lady rapper. You know, that's good to see.
Yeah.
I like the song better too. Not just the video. I like the song better.
But I do fuck with that trap energy song. I've seen those guys perform it live a few times, and actually performed at a couple shows that they performed to, and the song is fire. Like I fucks with that. I told this now, like, yo, that song's fire. So, but yeah, I gotta go through.
I like those effects, so I'm always good for some effects in the video. You know,
I feel you.
It takes away, you know, some real creativity.
I feel you.
I hear that.
Okay, so let's get into some shout outs here. Start with you. Go round.
Shout out Puffa Podcast.
Yep.
Always have the open invitation, which is Liddy.
Yeah.
Shout out Black Royalty, blckroyalty.com.
Look at that.
AS Visuals, hit me for those visuals, those music videos, those weddings, those kids' birthday parties, you know, hit me up.
All of that.
All of that.
Yes.
Hard.
And shout out to weed. You know,
Shout out to weed.
Smoke weed every day except for those 31 days that you take it out.
Yeah, we need a soundboard up in here. That's what
Yeah.
I give you applause.
Honestly, yeah, shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for having me and our amazing guest, like mind opening. So
informative.
that was great, and to like the very amusing comment section too. I really enjoyed that today. Yeah, honestly, shout out. His videos are lit, so I would just say AS Visuals. Yeah, I'll double down on that. Yeah, yeah. If anyone needs like a pop-in Instagram, just hit me up. That's what I do. So yeah, cool. Thanks, guys.
Damn, you know. Shout out, man. Shout out Neil, bro. He taught me some shit, you know. Helped me understand some things, you know. I was a little blurry on, so yeah. Big shouts out to Neil. Man, shouts out to fucking everyone who tuned in. Shouts out to everyone who came up on here. You know, we hope y'all come back again. And yeah, man.
Thank you.
That's on me for today. That's it.
Shouts out to the girls working.
Yes.
Shouts out to the girls.
They're working hard. Too.
Yes.
Shouts out to them.
Hard, bro.
Oh man, they're pretty cool. You know? Shouts out to them.
Hell yeah.
Again, you guys gotta come down to the lounge, 307 East Hastings.
Big facts.
Yeah. Shout out to the Cannabis Substitution Project, of course. Shouts out to you guys for coming through. Shouts out to Reaper, DZ. Shouts out to Anil, of course. Shouts out to Pot.tv. Shouts out to everybody in the chat. You know what I mean? OG Brick 420, A Pot Smoker. You know what I mean? Dale, man, come on, everybody out here.
All of the guys.
Before we go, though, I want to let everyone know again to go check out Long Live Low Key new project. It's out. New music coming soon, but until then, check that out. And also 604's Finest, that playlist on Spotify. Yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, thanks again to Neil. Cannabis Substitution Project. It was a dope episode. Tune in next week. Gonna have another dope episode. You know, rest in peace to Nate Dogg.
Big
Smoke
rest
weed
in peace,
every
bro.
day.
I was thinking about him. I was thinking about him last night. I was like,
he's been popping up in the shuffle a little bit.
I'm just like, bro, nobody will ever.
There'll never be another one with
there
that
will
sound.
never.
Rest in
That
peace,
is-
Nate Dogg.
R.I.P. Nate
R.I.P.
Dogg.
Nate Dogg. Hey, smoke weed every day except for the 31 days. Peace.
24/7, 365 niggas, we
Burn that,
on the block all day with a swisher, man, we
burn that, burn that,
got my real ass niggas in the house, we always
burn that,
ha.
burn that,
Burn that kush, homie, I'm about to bust down the whole bush. I'm about to roll up 6th grade swishers. Puff, pass, yeah, me and my niggas. When I'm in the ride, we burn that rubber. Never get burnt, cause I always wear rubber. Never get burnt, cause my skin dark color. But I'm coolin' in the shade when I spit that thunder. And I bring the lightning, when I spark up another J. These niggas got bunkweed, BC, best chronic. Shouts out to Fresno, the Bay, LA. Man, it's a West Coast dubs all up in the air. And rock to this ampy beat. Jake Easy, Big Puffa, 420 every day, I swear. I always
Burn that.
All my niggas from the 604, we always
Burn that.
BC means best chronic, we
Burn that. Burn that.
all my real day ones from the jump, we always
Burn that.
come on.
Burn that. Burn that.
Burn that thing. Neighbors always telling me, boy, that stank. Calling up the pigs, they ain't knocked on answer. Cigarettes legal, while I'm saying fuck cancer. When I'm in the ride, it's me, 3 homies. 4 real niggas, ain't none of us phony. 5 o'clock, picked up a chick named Jody. She told me she smart, so I said, bitch, blow me. When I'm on the block, I rock out Bobby Brown, talking down, selling dope, just a hobby. Smoking on a J, some J tried to rob me. Smoked him in the face, now the place no hobby. Yeah, I'm talking heat. Pass me a lighter. I'm feeling kinda stressed, now I'm blessed cause I'm higher. Smoking on the sticky with my niggas from the G. Like every single day, it don't matter where we be. We always
Burn that.
all my niggas from my G-Town hood, we always
Burn that.
when I'm up in the booth doing songs, we
Burn that. Burn that.
when I'm rolling down the highway in my car, my niggas, we
Burn that.
come on.
Burn that.
Yeah, nigga. Smoke kush every day.
Brought to you by SunWest Genetics.